I am a wedding videographer, and just recently the groom tried to slip the cake onto the face of the bride during the cake cutting to be funny, and she straight up slapped him. This wasn't in a joking way either, it was straight face, straight up hard slap to the face. Best part is I got it on video. At a classmate's wedding. They were young, maybe like 22. 23. There is apparently a caking tradition in some parts of the country, where when they cut the wedding cake, the couple feed each other a bit and smear each other's faces with cake as a joke. The bride had absolutely made 1000% clear to the groom she did not want to be caked. He did it anyways, and not just a small smear, but full-on smushed a piece in her face. She was stunned initially, then got up, face full of cake, yelled, "You asshole, I told you not to do that," and then ran to a back area in the reception. The groom tried to follow, but the bridesmaid's mother of the bride stopped him. So he sat at the head table awkwardly while half the wedding party rushed off with the bride. She stayed back there for like an hour. They eventually did let him back there to check on her. We could hear her crying and them arguing. The rest of the reception came to a screeching halt until one of the bride's aunts emerged and directed the servers to clear the tables and put on some music. They got divorced 2 years later. My dad's mother and stepfather owned a bar restaurant back in the 60s that hosted the occasional wedding reception. At one such reception, the husband caked the wife, even as she was asking him not to, knowing he would do it. When he did, a fist fight broke out between the newlyweds that soon involved much of the wedding. As far as I know, they were married for a long time after. At the reception line, after the church wedding ceremony, the bride had a large bottle of her favorite perfume and sprayed each guest with it, female and male, whether they wanted it or not, as they entered the banquet hall. Some guests complained that the smell of perfume was so strong that they lost their appetite and couldn't partake of the banquet. The groom gave a speech thanking everyone for coming that devolved in the space of about 2 minutes into a straight-up roast of his new brother-in-law. They were friends, and the brother-in-law seemed to take it in good humor. But there's only so much implication of "I'm for sure going to be fucking your sister tonight" that you can take before it becomes really cringy. It didn't help that A, I barely knew anyone there because I was a +1, and B, I was on the table with the elderly relatives from that side of the family, who were less than amused. I went to a wedding once where they did a potluck. I guess it's okay depending on the type of wedding, but the reception was at a fairly nice venue. The wedding couple was like an hour and a half late, and their best man didn't have a speech ready, so it went on for a very painful 15 to 25 minutes, also stating in there that they are going to have great sex now that they are married. This was a devout Christian wedding with many of the friends, including me, were from church. By the time me at like table 50 got to eat, I was lucky if I got something that was kept warm in a crock pot, but everything else was room temperature. We were able to go home between the ceremony and the reception, but I bet most food had been sitting in people's cars since that morning. Oh, also the church that she moved to did the whole no kissing before marriage thing and started making out with her new husband on the altar to the point where the pastor had to say, "Okay, that's enough." The whole thing was weird. When I was in high school, one of my hockey teammates had a kid with his girlfriend when they were juniors. They decided to get married, and the wedding was officiated by my teammate's dad, who also happened to be our head coach. The entire wedding was the bride and groom's direct family and the hockey team. At a Golden Corral. Then the reception was at the same Golden Corral. Then we had a hockey game that night. The whole thing was so awkward. The bride's father was so obviously disapproving of all of this. The other team we played the night somehow found out about it and hounded the guy the whole time. Felt kinda bad because they obviously didn't come from a lot of money. Now about 7 years later they have a second kid. He's an officer in the Air Force. Both of his kids plays hockey and he coaches and refs, and him and his wife look very happy, so I'm glad it all worked out for them. Friend of friends. Young, uber Christian small town naive girl. Meets married, much older man with 2 kids. Falls in love. He does eventually leave his wife. Doesn't want any custody. Wedding was her hometown church. His vows were over the top about how he has never felt love before, she is the only woman he ever wanted to marry, he's been so lonely his whole life, etc. He's literally sobbing through it all. Her turn to say her vows, and she's standing there saying nothing for at least 3 beats. Then she is handed a microphone and the piano starts playing. She's made up her own song, which are her vows. After the ceremony, we adjourn to the church basement for the alcohol-free reception. I am somehow roped into serving the groom's cake. It's 2 NASCAR car cakes made with an edible photo draped over the cake shapes and impossible to cut through without mangling the cake, so I have to peel it off. My friend is cutting the bride's cake, and it's a full inch or more of fondant on top of plain cake. No frosting. The buffet was potluck from the family. Food you'd expect at a kid's party. Pink punch was the only thing to drink. No dancing because of her religion. Then they left for their honeymoon at the town's only hotel, which was like a Motel 6 level dump in a 2-horse drawn carriage. They bought an apple orchard after leaving the city to live a simpler life. And really doubled down on the apple theme. Apples everywhere, on the tables, in baskets all around the venue, on the podium where they got married, pictures of apples hanging everywhere, small fake trees with apples tossed under them. The dude marrying them had an apple tie on, apples somehow incorporated into every dish for the reception. The cake was shaped like an apple. It was really fucking bizarre. They sold the orchard a couple years later because they had no idea what they were doing. My own wedding, so me. My brother and our wedding band surprised us with a beautiful rendition of a very romantic song by a guy called Juan Ruiz. Just so happened to be me and the missus' favorite song ever. Lots of happy crying and one of the best memories from that day. Unfortunately, my mill doesn't like to be one-upped, so she impromptu got a distant second cousin from her side of the family who we did not know to immediately sing My Heart Will Go On from Titanic. He was not a good singer and used a shitty YouTube karaoke track, and it led to very awkward slow dancing, followed by fuming from her after we cut it short, terrible feedback from trying to play the track on the mic from phone's speaker. Just completely deflated the beautiful moment from my brother's singing. At least I am happy to say we are still going strong and have been married for 10 years now. It should go without saying that little poop nugget of singing was not included in our wedding video.
Yeah.